But now, don't go anywhere, because we're going to have the next panel starting, you being there. So I would like to invite Taavi back on the stage, and also two more gentlemen. One is Tim Draper. He is, besides being a VC, educating and taking care for the next generation of entrepreneurs. And it's said that there is Estonian in every port, also in Teleport there is one Estonian, definitely. Sten, Tamkivi, the ex-CEO of Skype in Estonia, and they're going to talk about how to attract talent to a country. Sten, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here in Tallinn on the stage with this esteemed gentleman, so thank you for joining us. And just to lay the context for the what we're going to talk about, once we get this slide up there. We're going to talk about places. And so the way the world looks like today is that 40 years ago, a magnificent place for tech innovation was born, and we call it Silicon Valley. It's a valley down from San Francisco Bay Area, and this is where most of the most influential tech companies in the world have come from. However, in the last decade or so, the landscape of global innovation has been changing. So on the bottom of the pyramid, so to say, there are about a million people around the world building tech startups now. There are about 140,000 active teams trying to create something to change the world. And at the same time, the peak of the pyramid, if you have heard of the unicorn companies, the private tech companies that have achieved $1 billion or more valuation, then recently Niklas Zennström, the founder of Skype and who was running a VC firm called Atomico now, they've been publishing a research showing that out of the $160 billion tech companies around the planet, already 60% of them are outside of Silicon Valley. So startups can be built anywhere, and they are being built everywhere. So this is what we're going to talk about today, is to understand what are the things where Silicon Valley still excels, what are the chances and things for London and Tallinn to compete in that global marketplace. And what we see building Teleport, and we build software for knowledge workers and startup people to figure out where in the world they should live, and we have 150,000 people on the platform searching for the best place. And rarely there is just one answer for that. Very often you will see that the best designers are in one location, the best finance is in another, the best engineers in the third, and the markets that Your Royal Highness was mentioning can be in the fourth place. So how do you manage this multi-site life, I would say? And the questions that I would like to pose to you, gentlemen, are the following. First of all, let's start with a very global view. And before we get into your particular locations, my question is, do we still need startup hubs? Like there's remote work, and you can work from anywhere, you can travel, you can get on a plane, you can sort of hang out on GitHub and commit code, no matter where you are. So why do we even talk about startup locations? So Tim, maybe let's start with you here.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. So first, I really want to thank the Prime Minister. I actually keep my Estonian residency card very close to my heart, right here. I'm honored because I love that I got a little window on technology when we backed Hotmail a long time ago, and then Skype more recently, and I got this window that geographic borders were going to fall and governments were going to have to compete with one another for us, for the entrepreneurs, the capital, all the great things in the world. And Estonia was the first country in the world to, I mean, there were a lot of good competitive countries. There's Singapore and South Korea and New Zealand, as you mentioned earlier, are very competitive countries, but Estonia was the first one to recognize that there could be a virtual government. And so I honor you for that. I think it's just great that you and your team have really put together a real plan for all of us to be citizens of the world and for governments to compete for those citizens. And then Your Royal Highness, I was just in England, and I did a poll. And the poll, here are the people I polled. I polled the people at the flower show, the Chelsea Flower Show. I polled my taxi drivers, and I polled, yeah, a few Uber drivers. And then, although the taxi drivers were very mad at me when I was polling the Uber drivers. And then I polled the guy who organized the ferret race in where that great television show is held. Anyway, I polled all of them, and it was 8-3 in favor of staying in the EU. So I just want to let you know that it's very likely that you're going to stay in the EU. Now to get to your question about tech hubs. So I actually think tech hubs are really valuable, and not necessarily because they're not necessarily the ones that are government controlled or government driven. I actually think tech hubs are things like this, where people can bump into each other and improve their ideas or figure out what else is going on in the world so that they can be better at their jobs. Or just having all those random collisions and allowing just economic verve to grow. I think tech hubs are incredibly valuable for that. I have noticed that the government-controlled ones usually have 3 or 4 people in them, and then the ones that are run by some private group like this at Latitude59 are booming, and people all start to come. So I encourage you both to think in terms of encouraging tech hubs, but encouraging the private sector to run them.
Your Highness, do you have a separate? Okay. Your Highness, in the case of UK, there is obviously the history of the Commonwealth, and sort of this internationalism is built in, or you can cover continents without leaving the domain. So in that, like, do you think that there is a set of hubs that matter? And outside of that, like, have you taken this sort of view global as well?
Well, I would like to agree with what Tim said about hubs, because I think that hubs give what I would just share workspace an opportunity where people can actually meet who are of a like mind. I would also like to say that we have a hub in London called Tech City. That started entirely organically. It did not start with any government activity. And in fact, when I was starting out doing this in 2010, what I'm doing now in terms of prosperity, one of the conversations I had with some people at Number 10 was that the private sector should actually do more because government can't lead, it needs to follow. And if you can get the hubs to start, and then you can get your governments to follow and bolster and support, that is the way in which it is a better way of organizing these things. And it's very interesting how, as Tim puts it, those random collisions can make a huge difference to a startup or people who are looking to start up. And we've noticed that in terms of what I do at Pitch to the Palace. But across the sort of the globe, anybody who is starting up can start their business anywhere. But it becomes fairly evident fairly quickly where you should go to because the environment, the conditions, the collaboration is better. And San Francisco, Silicon Valley, London, there's some in Germany, there's some in Israel, there's some in Singapore, there's some here. There is a natural gravity of as it were, people joining hubs. And it's only a matter of chance and a good idea by somebody, and a hub will grow.
Thank you. Prime Minister, we've heard a few comments about the what's in it for the startups. Like, why would startups or startup people get together, and what are the benefits for them? What's the government's perspective? Why do you think there are so many cities trying to become a startup hub around the world? What's in it for the cities and states?
Well, we have the representatives of two of the biggest hubs on the stage together with us today, and I think both San Francisco and London are the places to be in global terms. But I would argue that also Tallinn, not as big as neither of two mentioned, but also Tallinn is the place to be, and our task as a government is to be an enabler in a way, and to keep up with the pace of the startup companies. I have on a regular basis, I have meetings with our startup community, and they actually don't allow me to be slow. They ask me to be very fit. They ask me to change laws in 2 weeks, preferably 2 days. Well, we usually manage to do it in 2 months, which still is quite fast. But you know, they really push me hard to create the best available ecosystem for the Tallinn startup scene, or for Estonian startup scene. So I think that's a very positive cooperation.
You're welcome.
And yes, thank you. Yeah, actually, Sten is part of our roundtable, and one of the strongest pushers in a way, has been for some time, and that's, you know, why we have many positive things in Estonia. But with e-residency, we kind of tried to give an alternative also to hubs. I think the hubs will be definitely there in the future, but we tried to offer an alternative in this way that you can be more location independent with the e-residency. You can run your business while you actually live in multiple locations, and that gives you just an alternative for the future. So I think that's a positive enabler as well. And last but not least, you asked what's in it for our countries and cities. I think today's startups are tomorrow's big players. Some of our Estonian startups already have received the status of a unicorn. So we should be proud of that. We already have thousands of people working for startups, and we are experiencing huge growth because of that. So that's really something, and you know, our task as a government is keep up with the pace.
Thank you. So there are a whole bunch of young people over this today and tomorrow that are going to suffer the pain of getting up on stage in front of 1,500 people and pitching. So this is what I want you to do now. There's a clock there, and I'm going to give you each 60 seconds to make a case why a startup in this audience should move to where you live. Why should a startup move to San Francisco Bay Area? Why should a startup move to London? Why should a startup move to Tallinn, Estonia? I'm going to be watching the clock and making weird noises when the 60 seconds pass. So Tim, do you want to start?
I'm not sure you should move to the Silicon Valley. You know, the Prime Minister just said, when he was up there, he said that not only are you encouraging Uber here, but you are also helping figure out how they do their taxes and how they do their pensions, whatever. We had to support 2 startups that are doing that in the Silicon Valley, and we're still not sure what we're doing is legal. But I love the Silicon Valley. Okay, I'll give you my quick pitch. 19 seconds. Okay, I'm going to wait until the last 10, 14, 13. A lot of great startups are there. A lot of great startups have started there, and there are some amazing technologies, and you should at least go visit the Silicon Valley to see what your competition looks like.
Your Royal Highness, the pitch for London.
Well, I don't think there's any point in going anywhere near Los Angeles or San Francisco. It might be warmer. You're going to get wet in London. coming to London, I think, is probably a stepping stone. Of course, if you are looking to find a market, then you're going to go to a place which has that geographic number or that demographic number. But I would say that nowadays, London has now got a weight of numbers and success. If you look where we are today in terms of relativity to where San Francisco was, we're ahead of them. There are things that we still need to do to create the conditions, but I would say that London is as good a place as any that you can get that startup feel.
Thank you. And Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, I agree with both of you, and sometimes the best ones to pitch for Estonia are the non-Estonians, the fans of Estonia. And one very true fan of Estonia described Estonia as an astonishing country, the country that is the fastest, strongest, cleverest, and as you can see, also a little bit modest. Also a little bit modest. Secondly, this actually describes our pursuit for perfection in many ways, and we need to work very hard in order to even be at the same picture with the two of them, because they come from really big hubs and really big centers, so we need to work hard in order to fit to the picture. Secondly, I would say that Estonia is probably the most hassle-free place to do business, and that pays for something. And thirdly, here you can really afford yourself a decent home. Really. Thank you.
Well done, thank you. Very, very well prepared, all of you. Home turf advantage. Just to conclude, I would love to get a very quick forward-looking comment from all of you. It has been said that the true innovation happens when there is this alignment between different sides. You need to have a business in order, you have to have the technology in order, you have to have the legal system, the right design. There has to be this combination of aspects that come together into great products and great companies. So knowing that, what is the one thing that governments and states and cities should do looking forward to be even better hubs for startups?
So my belief is that in technology, in our world, when there's a new technology that comes along, the people who take that technology and apply it to whatever market needs changing, they are the big winners. They're the ones who took peer-to-peer file sharing and turned it into Skype. They're the ones that took electric power and turned it into Tesla. And they transform industries, and they make them more efficient and better for consumers. I actually think government is ripe for transforming throughout the world. It provides really the worst service at the highest cost relative to all the other industries in the world. And there are new tech, and for lots of good reasons, but the new technologies that are now available to government are fabulous. In fact, the blockchain is the perfect bureaucrat. It's fair, it's honest, and it's uncorruptible. And so you've got new technology, you've got Bitcoin, the blockchain, you've got smart contracts, lots of things that can replace a big bureaucracy with just a fair computer. And I think government is about to go through a major transformation, and it turns out Estonia is really leading the pack here. I think we all have to sort of figure out how best to take advantage of these new technologies that then will potentially transform government. Make it more efficient, more effective, and we will love government again. I think you guys love government. We don't love it anymore.
Thank you. Your Highness, you mentioned 4 things that are your priorities with the Pitch and Palace and other initiatives. Like if I pressured you a little bit more, what's the top one?
Well, if I just follow up what we're saying there, that I think that in many cases, what was just been said is entirely right. Government should consider itself small, but understand that it is complex. And that complexity can be eased through use of technology. That's how government should see itself. And if government sees itself that way, then it will naturally get out of the way and allow people like you to innovate. And they will get behind people like you in order to encourage that. And listening to what the Prime Minister said about what you tell him to do, which is to change the law so that the law keeps pace with technology, is another area that I think is very, very important. But you asked about the 4 things that I do. It's a hard point as to whether or not a startup needs a distribution system or whether it needs supply chain. And the reason I think that is that if you can get a business to start generating capital, it is therefore going to have less need on some vultures that come around in the sense of venture capitalists who sometimes have lost track of where and what their need is. Finance isn't everything. Investment has got to be long-term because startups need that encouragement over the long term. So getting them into the habit of making money and into the system as fast as possible, I think is probably of more value than necessarily giving them money.
So it's rather teaching them to fish rather than give them the fish.
Yes, but when they get the money, they've got to understand how to use it. They've also got to understand that money doesn't grow on trees anymore, and that actually they've got to think at least a year, if not 2 years ahead for when they want the next. It's not worth coming back and saying, oh, next week I need some money. Right. It's a much more difficult platform today than it used to be.
Thank you. And Taavi, running a government that has created some of the most innovative government approaches that we've talked about, and probably will talk about much more during the next few days. What do you think is the global trend? What is the things that government should aim for to become hubs?
Well, speaking about global trend, I'm glad that many governments actually look what has been done in other places and actually are following. So that's really encouraging thing. But trying to answer as precisely as possible, I very much agree what has been said already. Governments, in a way, should stay away from the course of progress or not being an obstacle for the businesses and progress, and also be enablers and cope with the progress. That's certainly one very important point, and we are doing our best to improve it in Estonia, and this is something that we consider very self-evident in a way. What is also good in Estonia is that we have a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and we have our first success stories that actually encourage young people to start with startups. Skype was the first. Now we have TransferWise, many others that actually are success stories happening right here. So that is also something that is well. And if you ask very precisely what is the one thing Estonian government should invest into, I would say education. And education in ICT, education in secondary level, so all investments in education go in the right place and are the enablers of future economic growth.
Thank you, and I can assure that the Estonian startup scene is behind that one as well, so there is more and more private initiative there. Thank you, panelists. It's been an honor chatting with you about these topics, and as you heard, there is a role for startup hubs in the world. There is going to be more than one. There is going to be Silicon Valley among them, as well as London and Tallinn. You're going to be spending time in more than one yourself personally, and you will be building startups in more than one of those. So I guess we can join each other, wishing you all the luck in conquering that world. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Don't leave yet. We have small gifts actually for you. And did you know that each person actually, one of the things we do the most is actually sleep. And entrepreneurs all the time actually talk about the work-life balance and getting a good night's sleep, even when you're traveling, when you're flying, and so on. So we have this Estonian unicorn product that you can use actually. So all of our speakers today will get these ones. Thank you. And let's also do a group photo. And those who are proud and willing enough, you can actually take it out and put it on. Your Royal Highness. Thank you. Taavi, thank you. Tim, you'll get one as well.
Terrific. Oh, good. I'm thrilled.
And Sten.
Ite?
Okay, so guys, do a photo for a memory as well.
Photo.
Tim, Sten. Oh, they are really like risk-taking entrepreneurs. Nobody's putting the mask on. Thank you.